In the mood for a nice fall treat that's really going to satisfy your sweet tooth? Check out my pumpkin caramel bars. These are only 2 bites, 2 blue points, and you can have them plain or frosted. And I'll give you some options coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Today is one of mine, and we are continuing with the fall theme with some pumpkin caramel bars. Now, it doesn't have to be pumpkin caramel bars. These are basically pumpkin bars, and I will give you a few options for doing a topping or frosting, but the one I am doing is a caramel, easy caramel frosting. There are a few other options, and I was playing with 2 other ones. A coffee frosting to make like a pumpkin spiced latte. The coffee overwhelmed the pumpkin a little bit, but then I played around with it and reduced that. But D over at Dish with G said no to coffee. So I figured I'd go with something a little more neutral and less divisive with caramel. There is also on the recipe a plain vanilla cream cheese frosting. You can also top these with powdered sugar replacement, just some fat-free whipped cream, because just plain these bars are really good. But I'm gonna take it up a notch. And Paul actually got me to take it down a notch by reducing the size of the bars, because you know, I might get a little over generous with the bars at times. And so I was doing like 1/8 of the pan here. I'm cutting that down to 12, so they're a little more like actual bars and less like bricks. But let us go over the ingredients quickly, and then we will start preparing our pumpkin caramel bars. So first of all, I sprayed my 9x13 pan here with some pan baking spray. I prefer using the baking spray because it's got the flour in it and helps things to release. You could also line it with parchment to make like a sling. We have a 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We have 1/2 cup of protein powder. Now I'm using the Premier Protein powder. It's 1/2 cup. But originally I was doing it as 2 scoops, which equals about 1/2 cup. But then I noticed other protein powders have different size scoops. So I didn't want to randomize everything by giving scoops and then have them be different. So I just went with 1/2 cup. We have 3 eggs, a 15-ounce can of pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie filling or pumpkin pie mix. Those already have sweeteners and spices added into them. I'll go over this in a second. We have 2/3 of a cup of unsweetened applesauce, 1/4 cup of almond milk, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar replacement, 1/2 cup of white sugar replacement, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice, and in here I have a mixture of 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon baking powder, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Over here, I'm only doing 1/2 of the bars frosted because Paul wanted one side plain. He's not a fan of the sugar replacements when you can actually taste them like in a frosting where they're not cooked. In the cakes, in the baked goods, it's fine, it doesn't bother him. but to actually taste it, and I know I've heard other people say the same thing. This frosting that I'm doing shouldn't have an aftertaste, but the other two that I did had one. So Paul just asked that half of it be plain, and that way he can put powdered sugar, whipped cream, whatever he wants on it. So I'm making half of the recipe of frosting, but I'm going to tell you the actual entire recipe for the frosting, which is super easy. You're going to need 8 ounces of my light homemade cream cheese, the stuff we make from the non-fat Greek yogurt, so that's 0 bites, 0 points. So I'm on the iTrack Bites Better Balance plan, which is the equivalent to WW Blue. So if I give you bites, they equate typically to WW Blue as well. I'm not sure about the other colors. I never was on those plans. But we have 8 ounces of the cream cheese, and then we have 145 grams, which is about half a cup of, like maybe just under half a cup. So in the recipe, I call it a scant half cup. If you ever see the word scant in front of something, it means that you want it just under. So like say a scant half cup of the caramel sauce is not fully to the top. You might have a little bit that's not covered with the caramel sauce. Same thing, you might see a scant teaspoon of something. That just means don't fill it all the way. Just leave a little bit out. And the same thing if you see heaping. It's the other way around, where they want you to mound it up and not worry about leveling it. So scant means under, heaping means a little over. Both are just a little bit. So anyways, that's all there is to it. We're just gonna mix those two together and you have a caramel frosting. That's easy. So let me move a couple of things. Like we don't need our frosting just yet, and we're going to mix things up in just a second. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is in our larger bowl, we are going to combine the dry ingredients. The flour, the protein powder, the salt, baking soda, and baking powder, and our tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. And we're just going to whisk those together just to make sure it's one homogeneous color. You don't have to be too precise. You just want it to be without pockets of like pumpkin pie spice. And that's about it. Pretty easy. Let me get that out of the way, because now we are going to mix together the wet ingredients. Now, some of you may be wondering, why isn't the brown sugar and the white sugar replacement in with the dry? Typically when baking, the sugar is considered a wet ingredient because it dissolves into the liquid and becomes part of it. Whereas like if you put flour in with the liquid, it would start to clump up. It wouldn't be part of it. It would be making its own little thing there. And that's not what you want. So in most baking recipes, sugar is considered a wet ingredient for that reason, because it will blend in. So I've got the pumpkin, the eggs, 3 eggs, and you notice I actually thought of cracking them before I started filming. I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner, but you know, it is what it is. All right, so our 3 eggs go in. Our 2/3 cup of apple sauce, our 1/4 cup of almond milk. Why are you still over here? Our vanilla. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whisk all of these really wet things together first, because I want to not have to worry about incorporating all of this wetness together while trying to break up the sugar. So I'm going to whisk this mostly together. Make sure that those eggs get incorporated, because they do not like, even if they're at room temperature, they don't really like to play with others well. They're like, no, I don't want to go in there. And then you have to beat them into submission. That's all there is to it. All right, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to start with the white sugar and then the brown. Because the white sugar is already broken up and the brown sugar takes a little manipulating. I usually like to press that in a little bit before I start whisking. Now you could, if you didn't have brown sugar, you could use all white sugar replacement. I think, especially with pumpkin, the caramel notes of the brown sugar really enhances the overall flavor of the bar. But, you know, if you don't have any on hand and you really wanted to make these, don't worry about it. Just do what you've got. All right, so I'm going to switch to my spatula because when I pour the wet into the dry, first of all, I'm going to want to scrape out the bowl of all the wet ingredients. When you try to whisk the wet ingredients into the dry, it's fine at first, and then it starts to clump up and get stuck in the whisk. And I don't have time to deal with that. So I'd rather just switch over to my spatula and mix it together that way. And by the way, I have my oven preheating to 350 degrees. That is the temperature we are going to bake this at. Now you could also, if you wanted to, you could also bake these in like a jelly roll pan, if you wanted like real thin bars, you could do that and get more of that way. You could make this in any sort of pan. You could make it as a cake if you really wanted to, in a cake pan, maybe even in a bundt pan. But again, if you do, you have to adjust the time, because a bundt pan would be more concentrated, so it would take longer for it to cook in the center. So just keep that in mind. And if you used a jelly roll pan or sheet pan, that would be spread out much more, so the time would be much shorter. So just remember to adjust the time if you do change up the vessel that you are using. So you're just going to pour this into your pan. Okay, so I want as much of that batter in. I'm stingy. You know that by now. I love to get as much of this in as I can. And then you just, whoa, tried to get away. And then you're just going to smooth it all out, get it into the corners. That's where it likes to avoid going, is into the corners. So you just want to kind of make it sure you push it in there and just spread it out as evenly as you can. And then what I will do typically when it's something that's kind of loose like this, I'll just give it a little shimmy shake, just to try to even out anything, and then wipe off if you got anything on the edges, because you don't want those to burn when they're in the oven. Okay, so this is going to go into a 350 degree oven for 30 to 35 minutes. There are two ways that you can tell when it's done. If you press on the center gently and it bounces back, it's done. Or if you put in a toothpick and it comes out clean, it's done. I generally go with the toothpick just because I feel more secure with that, but I've also done the touch test and seen it bounce back. So either will work. If you don't have toothpicks, don't worry about it. All right, so this is going in and I will be back once it comes out. Okay, so I figured I would show you what I was talking about with touching the center of the cake or the bars. And this, I'm pretty sure, is not done yet. And if you look, so you press and it's holding that dent. That's not done. You want it to bounce back. So I'll give it another 5 minutes. That was 30 minutes. So I'll give it another 5. And then I will hopefully be able to show you the accurate touch test. Okay, the timer is gone off. Let us check it one more time. And it still looks slightly sunken, so let me see. Nope, see how I'm pressing it now and it's bouncing back. Hopefully you can, oh, it's not bouncing back right there. Let me give it another minute. Let me just double check with a toothpick and see what I get. Yeah, see there's still a little moistness on there. So the touch test, hello, was accurate. So I'm going to give it another, I'll say 3 minutes. So I'm up to 38 minutes at this point. So I'll be back. Okay, there goes my 3-minute timer. Let us check again. Looks a little better to me at the moment. Let's see. I don't know if you can see, hopefully you can, that it's bouncing back a bit. And double check with my toothpick. And nothing on the toothpick this time. So that is ready to go. So this took 38 minutes. So it all depends on the day, on the flour, on a lot of things. So 30 to 35 is the estimate, but it may be a bit under, maybe a bit over. So now back to regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so there you have it. This is the pumpkin bars without any frosting, obviously. This is going to have to cool completely before you frost it, because if we tried to frost it now, or even when it was slightly warm, it would just kind of like melt everything and seep into the bar, and you don't want that. So we're going to let this cool completely. That'll probably be, I would think, maybe 2 hours. Could be 1, could be 1.5, but I'm just going to move this aside and put the mitts on either side just to remind anyone that it is hot. And I'm going to bring in our frosting to show you how quickly this will come together. Just going to take the caramel sauce, put it into the cream cheese. Now, after you open this is the Smucker's. Actually, let me show you the bottle. This is the Smucker's sugar-free caramel sundae syrup with the no mess cap. And you need to store this in the fridge after you've opened it. You can see mine poured out pretty quickly because I just opened this bottle. I had some in the fridge, but I didn't want to fuss with that one. But if you do have one stored in the fridge, you want to make sure you take it out and let it come to room temperature before you try to squeeze it out, because it does get very chunky. And they say you shouldn't microwave it in the bottle. I don't know if that's for reasons like it might explode, but I have done it. I've opened the cap. There's not really a lot of, it's not like a real hole. Because of the no mess, it's got like plastic covering it. So that might be why, because it doesn't allow for enough. But I actually could probably take the lid off and microwave it that way. I would probably do that because I live on the dangerous side, but they say don't microwave it. So just to be on the safe side, take it out, let it come to room temperature before you try to squeeze out and measure your caramel sauce. So you go away, I don't need you anymore. And we're just going to whisk this together. Let me pick it up so it's not clunking against the counter here. Okay, and that's all there is to it. It is, of course, I splatter my apron. That's it. That's caramel frosting. You get a nice hit of the caramel, but you also get some of that sour from the cream cheese. So good. All right, so gonna set this aside, gonna let this cool down, and then I will be back to frost and give you all those fancy little nutrition facts. Be right back. Okay, so it's been just about 2 hours and it's still faintly warm, more like room temperature. That's exactly what you want. So you may notice there are some white patches. Don't worry about that. That is just that some of the sweetener didn't fully incorporate it and kind of floated a little bit. So it's just a little bit of sweetener. It's nothing to worry about. It's kind of similar to chocolate. Gets like those white patches called sugar bloom. And that's pretty much when sugar gets moisture, like if you put it in the fridge, then took it out to defrost, and that moisture would cause sugar bloom because the sugar is drawn towards that moisture. With the artificial sweetener, I don't think it's as drawn to the moisture as it should be or could be. So some of it just floats to the top, bakes in, no worries. Now, like I said, I shouldn't be pointing knives at you, but like I said, Paul wanted half of this plain, so I'm going to cut it in half, or as well as I can approximate, because you know I am notoriously bad at cutting even portions. It's just the way I roll. Now I'm going to frost one side of it with my lovely caramel cream cheese frosting. All right, so I'm going to turn this way and see, now I can see that that's not even. Anyway, I'm turning it this way because I'm right-handed, and the way the overhead camera is, I want it to be able to catch me frosting this without my hand being in the way. So, whoops, dropped a little bit over on Paul's side. Oh well, he'll just have to get over it. Now I know he'll see this and say, what are you talking about? Okay, so push that back over. So I'm just going to spread it as evenly as I can all over. And this frosting, like I said, in the recipe, this will be the main frosting. But I will give you 2 variations of the frosting and then other suggestions for topping this if you didn't want to use any type of frosting like this. Because it's actually really good on its own as well. So you really don't need to. It's kind of like what they say, it's gilding the lily, making something that's already prettier. This is making something that's already tastier. And there you have it. Half and half with a little smudge on Paul's side of our pumpkin caramel bars. See, now this angle, it looks more even. I don't know, it's my eyes. That is it. Like I said, this makes 12 servings. We'll have 6 plain ones and 6 frosted. And each of those is going to be 2 bites. Actually, let me cut one for you so you can see the size of the portion. 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to use my handy dandy fish spatula. And if you know me and know this channel, you know I don't use it for fish because I do not do seafood. But it's nice and thin to get in here and pull out a bar. So for our pumpkin caramel bars, just 2 bites, 2 blue points for this piece. Now, as far as calories go, the calories are 164. The fat is 1.9 grams. The carbs are 43.7 grams. And the protein is 10.3 grams. And that's, as I did it, with the whole thing covered in the caramel cream cheese frosting. If you don't use the frosting, you can calculate how that would be. Maybe I'll try to take that out in the app and put that down here as well if you wanted them just plain. And as I said, there are other options for frostings and toppings on the recipe. So I hope you will give this a try. This is absolutely delicious. Just the thing you want for this time of year. It'd also be great for the upcoming holidays. You can even cut each one of these in half and make 24. So I hope you liked this recipe. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and you are looking for recipes that can help you on a weight loss journey, like this one. Hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. And also comment down below if this is something you'd like to try, if you'd prefer the coffee or the plain cream cheese, vanilla cream cheese. Maybe just some powdered sweetener, maybe some whipped cream. Also follow me over on social media. I will leave my Instagram handle here, as well as 2 Facebook groups that I'm part of. One is mine, Recipes with Roy, and the other one is Finding Our Way, WEIGH, and I co-admin that with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing Life with Bree. So join us over there for some great people, tips, tricks, recipes, and plenty of support. So I am going to enjoy my little treat, and I'm going to give Paul one of his with some whipped cream. So until next time, bye.